So the procedure to put the canvas on the stretcher is pretty basic. Pulling it over the edge, putting 2 staples into it. Here I'm pulling it tight to the other side. 2 more staples. Remember now that this is unprimed canvas, so it's really easy to stretch. So now the procedure after I've got 4 sides stapled with 2 staples is I move left to right from the center while stretching the canvas. And I'm pulling slightly to the left as well. Now I should say that my hands are strong enough. They're not incredibly strong, but I can do this with my hands. You may find that it simply is too much and you will have to use a canvas stretcher. So you notice I'm indicating I'm stopping at the corner. I don't want to staple past that corner. Turning counterclockwise, I'm going to repeat the process across this end and all the way around the canvas. Now that I have completed that stapling in that direction, I'm going to repeat the process but in the opposite direction. You notice one difference here though is that I will actually staple right up to the edge. Now of course if you were left-handed, you could go the opposite direction. It really doesn't matter as long as you go one direction all the way around and then the other direction. The only difference is if you staple into the corner like this, you have to fold the corners the opposite direction. That's important to note. First time around, don't staple into the corner. Second time around, you can staple into the corner. That's the way you'll be folding the corners. At this point, I have a canvas stretched, as you can see. It's tight all the way around. There's no wrinkles. I just have to now finish the corners. As I mentioned, I did a video on this earlier. There'll be a link here, which gives a little bit more detail on the corners. And I explain it quite thoroughly. Basically just pulling that corner toward you, putting a staple in it, kind of pushing the material into the corner and pulling it up. Sometimes you have to fiddle a bit with the corner to get it just right. And it does leave a bit of a ball on the back. A lot of that's going to be cut away. And you just repeat the procedure all the way through to the other corners. The final thing I need to do is I just trim away the excess. I'm just putting one extra staple in to hold that down. And there you have the finished canvas. Now all we need to do is put paint and gesso on it. So here I have gesso, 1 small cup, and I'm using ordinary latex paint. And I've got 2 parts of that and 1 part water. And I'm just going to mix these together into a container and stir them thoroughly. So again, that's 1 part gesso, 2 parts paint, latex paint, and 1 part water. Now the reason I'm mixing water in, I should mention, is because I'm going to be spraying that on. If you're rolling it on, you may not use water at all. You may use a little bit of water, maybe half that amount. It depends a lot also on the gesso that you're mixing. Some gesso is quite a bit thicker, others is thinner. So you may have to vary that. The main thing is the 2 parts paint to 1 part gesso. So I'm just going to mix that thoroughly to prepare for spraying. So the spraying process is quite straightforward if you've used a sprayer of any kind. Main thing is just to get thorough coverage and to make sure that the gesso paint mixture goes on fairly heavy. You don't want it running off, but you want to try and get it done in 2 coats. So that you'll just have to practice a bit with that. If you don't have a sprayer, well, there's an alternative to that as well. So I'm sure that many of you will be putting this on with rollers instead of a paint sprayer. So for this, you want the paint to be a little bit thicker. As you can see here, I've indicated thickness of paint that you would use probably for a household project. The main idea here is just to get thorough coverage. Roll in both directions, generally is what I do. And try not to leave any ridges. That's key. And so after doing the edges, I will quite often go over the surface again just to make sure I haven't left any ridges. So once the gesso paint mixture is dried thoroughly, it needs to be sanded with 220 grit sandpaper. At least I find at this stage it's a good idea. Sometimes there are little lumps on the surface, especially if it's sprayed. Quite often the fibers of the cloth will stand up. So this is just regular 220 grit sandpaper. You can give it a light sanding, and then we're going to put one more coat on shortly. Just make sure afterwards that the surface is clean, either dust it off, vacuum it off, or blow it off with an air compressor. Welcome back everyone to the Passion for Life workshop. As you have seen in the video to this point, I have applied a couple of coats of gesso mixed with paint. 2 parts paint to 1 part gesso. Now I've applied this in a couple of different ways with the roller, and as you've seen also with the spray gun. Now at this point they have dried obviously completely, the 2 coats, and I've also sanded them as you saw in that clip with 220 grit sandpaper, dusted them off. Now I'm ready to apply what would be the final coat of gesso, maybe apply another one as well. But this will be 3 coats. This time it's going to be a lot thicker, and I'm also going to add a tint. So what I have here is I've got gesso mixed with white latex paint as before, but this time I've mixed it 1-to-1. And as you will see, it's a lot thicker. So that means I can probably just get this done with 1 coat. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, I have here some burnt sienna. Now how much I need to add to this, I'm not exactly sure. But what I do want is I want a very light reddish pink tinge to the final coat of gesso. Now this is optional of course. You could just paint it white and then apply this later with a brush. In this case I'm doing this for my wife, and she wants all of them tinted to this color. It's the color that she likes to have. She doesn't want to look at a white, stark white canvas. So you could use, of course, a different color. You could adapt that to whatever painting you're doing. That is the beauty of doing your own canvases, is you can adapt them to whatever color you would like. So I'll add that now, and we'll see what color we get. So as you'll notice here, I'm adding the color just in very tiny amounts. Because once you add too much, now you've got to put more gesso and more paint in to lighten it. And I do not want to do that. The important thing is this is mixed thoroughly. Okay, so I'm done mixing. I have probably put, this is my unit of measurement that I use for the paint. It's a small paper cup. I have probably put 1/4 to 1/2 of this little cup of this burnt sienna. Now you may not see it in here, but it's definitely a creamy color. Creamy brown, almost a pinkish. It may not look that dark here, but once we apply it to the canvas itself, we're going to notice how dark it is. So let's just rearrange things a bit here. I'm going to dump this into my container. I think you can see there now how dark it actually is. Okay. Of course, the main thing with this is you just have to experiment, see what color you want. I've mixed up a lot because I have quite a few canvases to do. But you can experiment on 1 or 2. I will say one thing though about painting and making these canvases. It's a lot easier if you make a bunch at the same time. Once you have your saw and your equipment set up to cut the wood, you might as well cut at least 3 or 4 of them, if not 5 or 6. And the same with the canvas, getting it stapled on, painting it, you're mixing up your paint, you might as well do a bunch while you're at it in lieu of just doing 1 or 2. Anyways, we're going to start applying this paint with the roller, and you'll notice when I start that, how dark it actually is. So this is just the same as applying the first coats. You can really see the color there now. So I'm just going to apply that. I'm applying it fairly heavily, as I'm hoping this can be the last coat before my wife uses them to paint some kind of masterpiece. So I will remind everyone that prints of our paintings are available at our website, www.PassionForLifeGallery. We also sell originals. Okay, so I'm just going to apply paint to the edges. And I just want to finish up with this surface. I see a little lump of something there. I want to get rid of that. Now, using the roller, or a sprayer for that matter, will leave a textured surface. So if you've ever painted a house or a wall, you know that if you lean to this direction on the roller to the direction that you're moving, will help you to remove the lines. It tends to fan out the marks. Okay, I'm happy with that. So that's basically it for rolling them. I have several more. I have to do larger ones, but I'm going to use the same roller. And depending on your technique or the way you like to paint, you can leave this or you can lightly sand it after it's dry. It'll just give you a smoother surface. Main thing is to check to make sure that there are no areas on the canvas where you can, clearly where you can see the canvas or where there's not enough paint. So you might want to, and if there's an area that needs to be repainted, you just have to touch those up or put another coat on. Okay. Hey everyone, just before I wrap up this video, I just wanted to let you know that I've done a cost breakdown for these stretchers. You can see it here on your screen. You'll note that I've included the cost of the plywood, the canvas, the gesso, and the paint. I've not included the glue or the nails for putting it together, but that should be minimal. Now, the prices that I've used are current based on things I found on the internet, Amazon.com. I'll put some links to those below. The one that's going to vary a lot might be the cost of the plywood, depending where you buy it. Anyways, as those prices that you find vary, you can adjust the prices somewhat. I've done a column, as you can see, for both primed and unprimed, depending which canvas you choose. It can make a huge difference. You'll note too that if you buy primed, you won't have to include the cost of the paint and the gesso for the first 2 coats. Now, this does not include the last coat that I put on in the video. Quite often, even if you buy pre-primed canvases, you may apply a coat of gesso yourself. Many artists do that. So just keep these in mind as you're working through these costs. Anyway, the reason I put this together was just so that you can decide whether or not it's cost effective to build your own. Don't forget the other factor that you need to consider is that building your own, you're able to customize them, build them to the sizes you want, etc. Anyways, I just wanted to leave that with you. Thanks a lot. Okay, so that is it for this video. It is the second part of a 2-part series on making canvas stretchers from plywood. Link to the first part will be in this video at the end and below. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope that, as I mentioned in the first video, that you can too make your own canvas stretchers. And as you've seen, you can tint them to whatever color you want. So thanks very much for watching. If you like this content, please hit the like button. Subscribe if you want to see more content. And we will talk to you very soon from our workshop or from our studio at PassionForLifeGallery. Thanks for watching.